Hey friends, welcome to Sassy AF TV Season 2, Episode 17, Becoming One with Your Sexuality and the Dance of Masculine and Feminine Energy. This week, you are in for a special treat. I am sharing a powerful conversation with Laura Pynson, a love and intimacy expert and the founder of the Conscious Love School. Laura has a beautiful approach to understanding who we are at our core and creating oneness, balance, and open-mindedness in our lives. We talk about the important role that sacred sexuality plays to ourselves as individuals and also as a coupling when that applies. If you listened to my previous podcast episode about masculine and feminine energy, you know how they both play important roles as they dance with each other. Laura and I take the conversation deep to examine the dance and to understand how we can use that energy to channel our sexuality, which is our human right. As Laura says, the path to sacred sexuality is finding oneness. I can't wait for you to listen. Here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Sassy AF TV and the Sassy AF audio experience. I'm so excited to have my special guest, Laura Pynson. Did I say that properly? I forgot to double check your last name.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure you say it way better. You've got such a beautiful accent. I'm so thrilled to have you on the show today. When we first met a few weeks ago, I was just so inspired by the work that you do, your energy, and how much love and light you bring to every situation you're in. I feel we already have formed really awesome connections. So I'm so appreciative for you being here and just so excited to dive into our topic about love and intimacy and feminine and masculine energy and all that good stuff today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yay. Laura is a love and intimacy expert, and she has all sorts of fantastic information about how to really tap into who we are on an energetic level, tapping into our feminine energy, our masculine energy, and I'm really excited to share everything that you teach and what you're an expert on. But I'd love for you to just start by share with us your story and how did you get into this work that I know you're so passionate about, but I just where you started off. So can you walk us down that path and share with us how you got into where you are today?
Sure. And part of it was very unexpected. The starting point was, like many transformation, a lot of pain and a burnout and a lot of pain due to relationships that we're failing over and over again, romantic relationships. And finding at the very beginning was actually, I was in a relationship. We wanted to have a child, but something felt off for me. So I started therapy. And as I started individual and group therapy, I started to contact memories and wounds and darkness inside that eventually led me to break up with that partner, also quit my job and just travel to Asia with my backpack to kind of completely reinvent myself. And my official idea was to study yoga, but I chose a school in Thailand that was a tantric yoga school. And I've been immersed in the tantric community for more than 6 months and discovered a completely out of the box way of relating between men and women. Like the way you do relationship in tantric communities has nothing to do with the way we do it in the Western world. The couple is not a thing. It's about the relationship between the masculine and the feminine, and the place of sexuality in these relationships is sacred, and it's about a transfer of energy that is then bringing you to oneness. Hence the spiritual side of it is actually helping you see through reality. So I'm going to stop there because I could talk about the spiritual part, but it's a bit abstract. But what it brought to me was coming back to my body first, through sexuality, which was unexpected, through yoga as well, but through sexuality, healing a lot of traumas that I was not even aware I had. Like the things that you can heal through, that it's like you have like flashbacks of you don't know where it's coming from, but suddenly you understand that there are parts of you that remember tremendous pain, and that needs to be healed. And after healing and discovering all that, I just couldn't go back to my life as it was before. And I had to keep digging all this new way of healing through sexuality, and transmit it also and teach it. And that's what I've been doing for 5 years now. I came back to Europe and starting being a healer and a teacher in these things.
That's such a beautiful story. And I think it's really magnificent that you were able to go deep within yourself to completely change what road you were taking, and also to really understand what you needed to, like you said, heal your body and heal your heart and heal your mind and become a teacher and become an expert in this way. And one thing that strikes me is a lot of times we think about sexuality and sex in a variety of ways, right? It can conjure up all sorts of imagery, and it can be very triggering for many people in many ways. I love your take on it, how it brought you back to your body and how you view sexuality through a healing lens. And I would love for you to go a little deeper on that and explain how that works and what that looks like.
Right. So I'll talk about it more from a feminine perspective, because that's what I've done for myself and for the women I've supported on that path. For me, it started with reconnecting with my sex, literally. And because the whole work is to own again the parts of us that we have suppressed or judged or that has been oppressed. And well, I don't know about you, but for most women I know, our sex is like, we have children and we have sex, but we don't connect to it on a daily basis, right?
100%.
Or we bleed. But that's basically what it's for. So it's a very ambivalent relationship. A lot of women are ashamed of it. They don't want to look at it. They don't. So, and if you have that much shame and judgment on a part of your body, it means you have it on a part of yourself, of who you are, and that is that judgment and that separation on some part of you that is creating inner conflict and disempowerment. So more concretely, the healing goes with what we call yoni massage in Tantra. So it's internal pelvic massage that is done with the intention of liberating past trauma, because trauma is ingrained in the muscles inside. So that's how you heal, is by actually finding where the trauma is trapped. In a way, the energy is trapped in your body, and you release that. And for me, there was this magical experience during one of these massage where I could suddenly, the pain transformed into pleasure, and I could also feel the warmth and the aliveness. I could feel something pulsing in my body that just blew my mind. I could feel the power of it, and it felt like love and light, and it was inside of me. So suddenly I realized that I have this power inside of me, this beautiful, beautiful thing in the very space that I was separating myself from. So it's an inner union that happens from there. And once you have this kind of inner reconciliation with the feminine, because that's what this is about, then you have to make peace with the masculine, and that's the next step.
Okay.
And you can do that within yourself, like observing the relationship you have with the masculine inside. But of course, the relationships you have with men are going to be a great lab for you to see also what you're judging on the masculine and what you're looking for So that's the next step, is through relationships with men, or with women as well, but you kind of exteriorize the observation of what you're separating yourself from, what you're trying to make yours. The idea at the end being that you make everything yours, like the whole spectrum, you welcome it and you experience it within you.
Well, and the first time that I heard you speak, you spoke really beautifully about that everyone has within them the masculine energy and the feminine energy, regardless of your gender or the gender you identify with.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, at certain times, the amount of masculine or feminine energy that we display or are channeling varies. So maybe it would be helpful if you could give us a little definition of, what does masculine energy look like? What does feminine energy look like? And how do they show up within us in those variety of ways?
Yes. And the first thing I want to say about that is that masculine and feminine, it's a framework. It's not, it's a reality, but it's mainly a human way to kind of grab on something that is very complex. And it's been different ways of approaching it. What you read nowadays, because you find it very easily on internet, if you type it, you're going to find definitions. They never say where it comes from. And it's actually a mix of tantric philosophies that are talking about Shiva and Shakti, Shiva being the divine masculine, Shakti being the divine feminine. It's also taken from traditional Chinese medicine that talks about the yin and the yang, yin being feminine and yang being the masculine, but it's actually a different approach, and some attributes are opposites. And of course, we also bring in a lot of gendered stereotypes into the mix. And some facts that come from the biology of male and female. So I just want to preface saying that there's no truth on what is feminine and what is masculine. It's a framework, and what matters is how is it helping us knowing ourselves and relating to each other in better ways. But to put it in a nutshell, what is common to almost all these definitions, all these different ways of defining it, is that the feminine is more on the receptive side of things, is more like an open cup that will receive the world. Sometimes we can say it being passive, and the masculine is the more penetrating, active force in the world. And that is the base of the differentiation that you can actually see in the genitals. Like if you look at the sex of a woman and the sex of a man, it's actually a good metaphor for what the masculine and the feminine are, that more tangibly and in our daily life. When you find yourself doing things in the external world, creating structures, working, being very active, trying to control the external world, you're more in your masculine, and it's generally going to feel a bit more fiery. When you are more in your feminine, you can be more in your inner world, in your emotions, in your feelings, just perceiving them, not doing anything with them, just being with. And you can be in an energy that is much slower, softer. So these are like the main attributes for each. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know we talked about this recently. I think I used to, for myself, put myself in that masculine energy space very frequently. And for me, it didn't always feel authentic. And I felt like I was kind of struggling through, almost like walking through mud in my life. And in the last, I don't know, maybe 18 months, 2 years, something like that, I've embraced this more fluid, surrendering way of life, which I think is more associated with the feminine energy.
Yes.
And that seems more true to who I am.
Yes.
Even though I still like structure and I still like order and I still like to be in charge and that fire. But when I lean into this more fluid way of life, it feels more natural and comfortable and pleasurable to me. So I can 100% relate to what you're saying. And it's funny how sometimes we put ourselves in boxes based on where we think we should be. But then if we're a little more open-minded to kind of understanding what the possibilities are, we can really embrace who we truly are inside.
Exactly. And that's exactly what this approach of the masculine and feminine is about, is seeing the whole potential. Mm-hmm. That's just what you said. It's beautiful. It's about seeing all the possibilities and stepping out of the limitation that we put ourselves in by saying like, oh, I could also be like this or like that. And broadening the spectrum of who we are, or at least choosing consciously what we want to be, instead of just being conditioned by society, which is one of the problem in the dance between the masculine and the feminine at the moment, is the domination of the masculine imposed by men. But for the last decades, women have also been more and more masculine in their way of being, because they've been joining the workforce as well, so taking on that culture, and that's what we're facing at the moment. And interestingly, this crisis with the coronavirus forcing us to be inside, forcing us to slow down, forcing us to question what world do we really want, because desire is also an attribute of the feminine. It feels like the world's asking for a rebalance or re-articulation, and a different way of articulating the feminine and the masculine.
Do you think that the point that you were saying about the male dominance over the last decade or so, is that a response to this feminism that really erupted in the 70s and 80s, where women were asking for more rights and, you know, coming out stronger in the workforce, and there were more, you know, working moms? I mean, all of that, I feel like there's a pretty strong shift where for a long time before that, women were expected to live a certain role and stay at home and be with the children and take care of the house. And then when, you know, the feminist activists came up and they said, no, we want equal rights. We want to stand right by the men and have our place like the men do. And then have taken it above and beyond, which is cool, but maybe we've swung a little too far that direction.
Yes, and that is the point indeed. A domination by the feminine is not going to be any better than a domination by the masculine.
Right.
Especially if it's a domination by the feminine that is actually borrowing or becoming masculine, because that's the feminism in the 70s actually wanted to be the same.
Right.
The masculine, and the masculine and the feminine cannot be the same. That's the whole point. They're different, and we need both, and we need both to be dancing together. We need that synergy between the two of them. We need to replace domination from one side or the other by union, and that's the whole point. It's oneness in the end. It's union. It's alliance.
I love that. I love that vision, that visual of the union, the oneness, the coming together, the yin and the yang. I mean, that powerful imagery.
Yes.
I'd love to also get your take on going back to sexuality, because I'm always interested in more talk about sexuality.
Yes.
And like you said, there's a lot of societal pressure, personal pressure. A lot of people have shame around sexuality, like you said, right? There's religious reasons for it. There's all sorts of reasons. And of course, you know, at our core, you know, having sexual relations with other people allows us to reproduce, et cetera, have babies, all that good stuff. But sexuality is more than just reproduction, right? And humans are one of the few mammals, I think the only other ones are dolphins, if I remember correctly, that get pleasure from sexuality. And yet it seems to create this kind of issue and discordance in our minds, right? That it's allowed and that it's okay. But there's so much beauty and power and opportunity when we can really tap into our sexuality. And I think that that's something that many women in particular struggle with, you know, understanding it, owning it, and doing it. So how do you work with women on that?
Right. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a beautiful topic, and I'm not sure we're going to have time to touch on it, but you can do healing through different types of sexuality as well, and blend it with energy work. It's so many things you can do with sexuality it's not even about orgasms anymore. It's about oneness, what we just talked about. Like, true path of sacred sexuality is finding oneness. But to go back to how do you start, which basically when you come from a place where it's all kind of shut down a little bit, you start with yourself. That's the first thing. You don't try to solve that with a partner. You start with changing the relationship with your own body, going back again to changing the relationship with your sex physically, and your whole body and sensuality in general, and reopening yourself to pleasure as something that is necessary and not something that should be guilty. So there's all this work on pleasure as your duty, not just your right, your duty. And how can you self-source pleasure as a woman? That's the first thing. Because what I see a lot of women trying to do is they're focused on how can I orgasm with my partner.
Right.
You cannot start there.
Where do you start when you want to work on your sexuality, but you come from a place of being fairly shut down? You don't start with your partner straight away. It's just too hard. You have to start with yourself, going back again to the relationship you have with your own body and with pleasure in general. There's a lot of work on limiting beliefs, of course. There's also a lot of work on conscious or unconscious trauma. So it's basically all the reasons that we are armoring ourselves. Because that's the thing, you cannot surrender to sexuality if you come with a big armor of not wanting to be hurt, right? That's the thing that is keeping us from really enjoying sex, is some sort of protection mechanism that we put in place because we have been hurt in the past, or our mothers or grandmothers have, or there's so much going on there. So the first thing is to explore ourselves in the safest context possible, so being on our own, and understand how pleasure works in our own body, because women are wired differently. And physically, energetically, and psychologically, there are different turns on and turns off for people. So the first thing is this self-exploration. And once you manage to find pleasure on your own and you feel free and complete on your own, then you can explore with a partner feeling empowered. And then you can explore new archetypes as well in your sexuality. You can kind of embody different type of erotic persona, and generally also what comes with the self-work first is a capacity to communicate what you need and what you want, because that's another big obstacle to a satisfying sexuality, is that it's hard to tell our partner what we like, what we don't like, first because generally we don't know, and then even when we know, we don't want to hurt him. So then comes the work of that is more the relationship work of how do you communicate, how do you trust each other, how do you build the emotional safety first in the relationship that will allow more and more openings in the sexuality.
Oh, there's so much in what you just said that is striking personal notes with me. And the whole thing about the armor and the protection and not wanting to get hurt, and the communication and being able to really express yourself in a way that feels good to you. It's so mind-boggling to me, truly, because I've thought about this topic, I mean, for so many years in really, really thorough detail for myself. And it still baffles me, even with the work that I've done on myself. And, you know, I hear you speak and I like understand exactly what you're saying. You know, I hear the words, I literally understand it. And yet I still struggle with this internal space of being able to let go and to, you know, really connect with myself. So I can 1,000% relate to what you're saying. And it's so, and sometimes I get frustrated with myself because I feel like this is something that's so natural and such a part of being a woman and being a human. Why is it so damn hard to get out of my head and just enjoy and just be in my body and feel the pleasure? Why is it so damn hard? I mean, I ask myself this all the time.
Thank you for sharing this. And I think it's such an important topic for women indeed, because that's where empowerment starts. And that's a very powerful place to start. It's never ending. And I just want to bounce back on what you said. It's natural. It's actually not. Procreation is natural. Sex for procreation is natural.
Mm-hmm.
Sex for pleasure, I mean, it is natural in the sense that everything is natural. We are animals, but it's also so intertwined with culture, and the thing is, culture is putting sexuality in boxes that are not fitting everyone. What I see a lot of women failing at is trying to be at ease in a type of sexuality that is actually not their primary type of sexuality. I'll mention what I call the aerotypes, because that might help you in some ways. And that's something that is more unique. So you have primal sexuality. We all know primal sexuality. It's genital, it's intercourse, it's looking for orgasm as a release of sexual tension. So it's exemplified by porn type of culture, and it's mainly masculine. So that's one type of sexuality, and that's the biggest model that we have. Not only a small percentage of women are actually dominantly primal in their sexuality. It's not how they are wired erotically. It's not going to work for them. A lot of women are what I call sensitive sexuality. They need much more time. They need a full activation of their senses. So touch, smells, vision, like all the senses need to be activated. They need a lot of safety, and they're not so much looking for orgasm as release of sexual tension, but more as a way of being together and of expressing love, loving and being loved. Then you have transgressive sexuality, that is all about where the excitement comes from breaking rules, comes from doing something that is forbidden, comes from power play or role play or fantasies, anything that is taboo. So these people were mainly wired to be turned on by this. In primal or sensitive sexuality, they're going to be bored. It's not interesting to them. So they cannot access pleasure through the other two. And then you have the mystic sexuality. This one, it's people that are generally hypersensitive. And because they are hypersensitive to energies, if if it's too intense right away, they're going to short circuit, like overheat and like completely shut down. They need a lot of space. They need a lot of anticipation. These are the people who are going to go to tantric workshop and love working with breath, love working with no contact sex, because you can totally have sex without even touching each other in a way. And then you have people who actually use their sexual energy in what a sublimated way. So it's not through sex, but basically you have a limited amount of sexual energy. It's your life force. You have a limited amount. If you use that for art, for example, that's one other archetype, artist. And we all have some sort of artist within us. You use that sexual energy for creation. You don't have as much left for the other type of sexuality. Then there is the architect that is more about creating projects in the world, like maybe more professional projects. And then there's the alchemist that is obsessed with healing, transformation, growth, spiritual evolution, and they use their energy for that. Now, depending on where you are on the 7 levels, they actually correspond to the chakras. If you're mainly an alchemist and you meet someone who's primal, it's not going to match at all. You're going to turn each other off. And a lot of time, of course, we tend to attract a partner that is not in the same aerotype as we are. So we all do what we think, we all do to the other person what we like, but we don't like the same things. So, so maybe for you, maybe you're a mystic, and maybe you need a sexuality that is more sacred and more subtle in the way you use energy. Or maybe you're transgressive. I don't know, but that's part of knowing your erotic wiring is incredibly helpful. And that's generally the missing piece when people work on their sexuality. Because even if you work in a relationship with your body, with pleasure, then if you still try to get pleasure from a type of a box that is not yours, you're going to fail. You're going to keep failing. Okay. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit long, but I'm just so excited.
There's so much to talk about in this topic, and we'll have to somehow figure out how to like circle back and do more of a deep dive on this at some point. But what I'm really fascinated in is in our culture, in our society, it's such that, you know, when you're a teenager, early 20s, right, at the height of your hormonal peak, and, you know, you're fueled by these hormones that you don't understand, right? And you're just going after whatever, whomever, et cetera, right? And you may or may not match up with a person of whatever sex that, you know, you end up with or you don't. But during that time of life, right, most people are not that in tune with who they are on any level, sexual or otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and that's also the time when a lot of people are kind of like finding their mate, right? It's not really surprising that then later on in maybe your 30s, early 40s, whatever, you're finding that disconnect as you become more in tune and self-aware. Yes. And then you're potentially realizing that your partner, right, doesn't have the same match on all levels. And yes. I've recently been seeing human design, which I think we talked about a little.
Yeah.
And human design also taps into the chakras in a different way. And so I love this stuff. And I think it's just, gosh, I wish I just had a chart of all my things. It's like, I want to have a chart of like my sexual chakras and my human design and then match it all up. But the reality is like, life isn't like that, right? And we end up who we end up with, and we cross paths with who we cross paths with. So knowing that if we have this information, it would be really cool to be able to like match up to the perfect person that satisfies us sexually and lovingly and all the ways in a relationship. But knowing that the reality of that is probably like very little that it actually happens. How do you help women kind of come to terms with where they're at as they learn who they are now at whatever point they're at in their life, and with the relationship that they have in front of them?
Yes. And you know, I want to challenge that idea that it would be better if we were meeting someone that is like us. That would rob us from the opportunity to grow through the process of, you need tension and friction and pain to grow, or else you just let yourself be.
Growth mindset, absolutely.
Exactly. And I knew you would agree with that. So that's actually an important premise. When you want to work on these things, it's working on it from a place of, oh, it's an opportunity. I'm not trying to fix something that is broken. I'm trying to make the most of whatever is there for a reason. So once you know your aerotype and you know your partner's aerotype, then you create kind of sex labs where you're going to experiment. You make hypothesis like, okay, so my aerotype is more that, so I think I'm going to prefer it if we do it that way, and I want to see how it feels for you. So you do a set, like you decide 20 minutes, and we're going to do oral sex, but in a way that is for sensitive type. So starting with activating the whole body and very slowly, and make sure the environment feels very safe, and being kind of romantic about it, and see how it feels for you, if it's your type, if it works, if it confirms that it's your type, and how it feels for your partner. Is he bored? Or maybe he's going to enjoy it as well, just because he loves you and he wants to meet you where you are. And what generally happens when couples work on aerotypes, they discover within themselves something that they didn't know, and they grow into an aerotype that wasn't theirs at the beginning. Like my husband is more sensitive, which is a more feminine aerotype. At the beginning, I was kind of bored with that. And now as I make the effort for him to kind of meet him where he is, I'm discovering that it feels really good for me too. And it's introducing myself to a side of myself that I needed to meet. So that's the beauty of being with someone who's different.
Yeah.
It's actually going to show you parts of yourself that you didn't know were there, and making you fuller. And it's totally possible to reach a full spectrum sexuality. But it does take commitment. Like you have to decide that, okay, this is my growth edge. I've done a lot of healing, personal development, and many things. Now I know that sexuality is my next challenge. And of course you have to convince your partner that it's a good idea, which is not always easy. And you have to clear the space of the relationship first. You have to make sure that everything is safe emotionally. And then you go on a few months of challenges and experimentations, and it becomes fun, and it becomes a space that, instead of trying to reach a goal that is culturally conditioned, like sexuality should look like this, and you should have an orgasm like that, and that, you wipe all that out, and you're just like, okay, we're just going to play, and we're going to be curious, and maybe it's not going to be pleasurable. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we connect through that.
And to bring it full circle to this conversation, what I'm hearing you say, it comes back to oneness.
Yes.
And it comes back to that finding that balance and learning from one another and being open-minded, not only to others, but being open-minded to self.
Yes.
So how can we really be expansive in our whole self, mind, body, and spirit?
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about openness. Indeed.
I love it. Because I don't need to tell you this, but it's not a topic that is generally talked about on a regular basis, but it should be, because it's part of who we are as humans and how we relate to not only to ourselves, but to one another. And it's a beautiful topic, and there should be no shame, even though it exists culturally. So if we can help break down those barriers and, share more information through conversations like this, then I think we're doing our work in the world.
Love it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you. I had no idea the conversation would
Me neither. That's the fun of this.
On that topic, but I think you're right. And I think that the consequences of shut down sexuality are bigger than what we think. It affects the couple, it affects families, and it affects society in general. So yeah, I think you're right. And thank you so much for creating the space to have these conversations.
Well, thank you for sharing and bringing it. I mean, part of my mission in the work that I do is to, open the doors to communication about topics that women are thinking and not necessarily having. Because if we're thinking about it, we need to be talking about it. And if I can bring experts like yourself into this space where we can have this knowledgeable and safe and formative conversation, then awesome. So I'm thrilled. I love this. I want to keep going, but I want to make sure that we are mindful of everybody's time. And my last question that I want to ask you before I let you share where everyone can find you and how they can connect with you is I want to know something that makes you feel as a sassy woman.
Ooh. Well, I think maybe because I'm thinking of that because I've been doing it a lot the past few days, but dancing does, moving my body, at some point, I end up in that place where I'm like very playful and I'm not a good dancer. It's not about that. It's about being in my body. That's one thing that makes me feel sassy. Yeah.
I love it. Well, from one not great dancer to another, I agree. It's about moving your body and feeling the energy and just feeling the vibe. That's what it's about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So tell everybody where they can find you, where they can connect with you, and how they can learn more about the fabulous work that you do.
Thank you. At the moment, I'm mostly present on Facebook. And I have a Facebook group there where I share a lot. Most of my content for now is there. I'm slowly going to move it to consciouslove.school, which is going to be the new space where I share a lot of free resources, a self-love dance challenge, a connected couple challenge. It's kind of an introduction to Tantra. And now that we've talked about it, I think I'm going to have to do something talking about aerotypes, right?
Yes, please do. Please do.
So yeah, that's going to be a good place. Instagram, I'm not there yet completely, but at some point it will happen. So yeah, consciouslove.school, laurapynson.com, and Facebook are the three main places, and you will find free content somewhere there.
Well, I'll make sure to put all the connecting points in the show notes. And I know you do several regular free challenges that people can join you on so they can get a little taste. And then if they want to work with you more closely, they can reach out to you that way. So
exactly.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Laura, so much for being here. I love where the conversation went. It was fabulous. I learned so much from you today. I look forward to keep learning from you. And I'm just so appreciative and thankful for you for being here and just truly for being such a beautiful spirit. I love your energy. I love the love that you bring to the world, and you bring fully, wholly, completely oneness. It's beautiful. So thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much. You're one of my big crush. And I love what you do as well. And the positivity that you bring. So keep doing it. I want to listen to a lot of more podcasts and your motivation videos, and that's generally a highlight of my day. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, mutual love fest and mutual crush fest too. And thank you all for being here with us on Sassy AF TV and the Sassy AF experience. Make sure you tune in every week for fascinating interviews, and we will be here with you always for more positivity, topics that you can't wait to get more, and we'll see you soon. Bye. We talked about so many important topics on this interview. I can't wait to go back and talk with Laura again to bring you even more juicy information. My hope is that this conversation inspires you to think more about your own relationship with sexuality and how you can bring it to the forefront of your life. Thanks again for being here and tuning in for another episode of Sassy AF TV. It would mean the world to me if you would leave a comment and take a screenshot to share it with your tribe on Instagram or Facebook. Don't forget to tag me at Sassy Healthy Fit. Then make sure to head over to sassyhealthy.fit and sign up for our mailing list so you always know the latest and greatest in sassy fun. See you next time.